Good evening, my friends. This is a presentation I gave to the Searchers Gem and Mineral Society. This was back in April 11th, 2023 in Anaheim, California. And they asked me to come and speak on Afton Canyon. And the presentation I gave was recorded, but the recording was just so poor that I decided that I couldn't post it because it was just really irritating to listen to because the recording was just poorly done. So I decided to re-record this on my computer screen. So I could not talk about Afton Canyon without giving some background about the ancient Lake Manix. We'll talk a little bit more here in just a minute. So here's the videos I've done, and this is how they, the reason why they asked me to come, because of a number of presentations. I have a number of followers in their club, and they wanted me to come and speak. I have roughly 63, 65 videos, and actually more than 70, but I've taken a number of them offline because I want to update them on some new information and make some corrections. So I would encourage you, if you haven't become a follower with me on Facebook. So you're probably wondering why Thistle, Utah, the landslide that occurred in 1983, why I have this on the computer screen. Because it's important, because it gives us some information regarding ancient Lake Manix that occurred 10,000 to 500,000 years ago. So back in 1983, when I was a geology student, was a senior at the time, there was a huge, like 500, 100-year flood. We got so much rain that year that we had all sorts of flooding and landslide problems. This is what caught my eye, is that this landslide here that occurred, it was an ancient landslide that was reactivated by all the water lubricating it and causing it to slip. And it blocked this canyon here. And the Spanish Fork stream started backing up in this area right here. And it basically inundated a little village that was located right here. There was big concern that this was going to eventually breach and flood all the cities that are in the floodplain below it. And so the federal government came in and helped drain it and fix the situation right here. And you can see where earth-moving equipment are bringing soil down here to heighten the dam that was created right here. So this is at the highest level, and I've circled right here this area right here that is an island. And I'm going to show you a picture in just a minute. But in 1984, Utah County hired me as a geologist, and they asked me to do evaluation of the land use areas around it, mark the landslides, what was the feasibility of developing these areas. And it was actually, they wanted to keep the lake, and they were having the federal government evaluate if the landslide could act as a permanent dam. And generally, I knew that that wouldn't be the case. I think everybody knew that there was some safety issues with that. But it was great. I was hired to evaluate all the land uses. I mapped the landslides, the types of materials that are there, the size of the landslides, where they were located at, leakage potentials, just a 200-page document. It eventually became my master's degree that I obtained, paid for by the county of Utah. It was awesome. One of the happiest times of my career. So we're going to zoom in on this little island right here, and then we're going to go with the Afton Canyon. What do you notice here? Here's the island, and the water's all been drained since this time. And this is 40 years later, exactly 40 years later. What do you notice? Do you see these little notches that ring around here? And actually, you can see some more rings right here. This is the wave-cut terraces that were created by the lake. The wind would blow in the lake, come up the canyon, blow in the lake, create waves, and then they would crash into the shoreline there and create these notches. Now, this is important because what we're going to be talking about with ancient Lake Manix, we're going to be going back 10,000 plus years, and we're going to see these same wave notches. So I'm not sure why I included this picture right here. I was asked, my wife and I go to Disneyland a lot. This is me and this is my wife, Lori. And I had somebody ask, what do you see when you walk around Disneyland in terms of geology? So I annotated this picture, and this is actually what I see. In fact, there's a lot of geology that was recreated by Disneyland, and I always have my geology eyes on. It's just something I'm very passionate about. So, just a little principle, and then we'll go on with the presentation at Afton Canyon. An important principle of geology is uniformitarianism. It's a principle that basically says what geology that you see actions are working today, you can go back in time and see those same things occurring in ancient times. And it's developed by James Hutton, and he's really the father, or at least one of several British geologists that were the father of modern day geology. And he passed away 1797. And I love this right here. Interestingly, I need one of these here. I have one of my ears that are going out. So here's ancient Lake Manix. Now, believe it or not, in the Mojave Desert, there was once a series of ancient lakes that filled the desert area. This lake here, ancient Lake Manix, was almost 100 square miles in area, and this is the boundaries that you can see. It was formed roughly 500,000 years ago, the best guess, to sometime between 25,000 to 13,000 years ago. This occurred what's commonly known as the Ice Age period, which was cooler, and it had a lot of glacial water that was melting from the Sierra Nevadas that were coming into this area here and creating lakes. So here's a zoom up of ancient Lake Manix. I've done a lot of backpacking and geology exploring in these areas right here. Harper Lake, you can't see it, it's off to the side here. And here's Afton Canyon that's located in this area right here. And eventually we're going to get there, but we need to talk about ancient Lake Manix before we can talk about this area. So ancient Lake Manix was actually a series of Pleistocene lakes and rivers that occurred in the Mojave Desert during the Pleistocene geologic epoch. And it lasted 2.5 million to 11,500 years ago. And again, it's often referred to as the Ice Age time. Now, when the Ice Age died out some 11,000 to 9,000 years ago, depending on what calculus that you use, it's a very short time ago. If you go by generations, it was only 600 generations ago of people that lived that when they were in the desert, there was all these lakes and animals that no longer exist today. And ancient Lake Manix is located right here. And you can see how the Mojave River coming from the San Gabriel Mountains came down, basically filled up this area right here. Here's Coyote Lake. Actually, Coyote Lake at one point was part of Lake Manix. Harper Lake, which I've done a lot of exploring there, never really was part of Lake Manix. And you can see where the overflow went from Lake Manix to Soda Lake. Here's Baker, California, Silver Lake, which I got a video on that. And then a spill, it would spill out into eventually oh my gosh, Death Valley. I had a senior moment there. So 600 generations ago, which is like nothing. So the Native Americans actually have traditions of these lakes once existing. Probably the one that surprises me the most is the ancient Lake Cahuilla, which I've done a video on that too. When pioneers first came out here, the Native Americans, the Cahuilla Indians, had a tradition. There was once a giant lake that existed in this area right here. And the pioneers were just laughing because it was just absolutely all desert. That ancient lake was 2,000 square miles. Now, you go out there today, it's just a barren desert. There is this Salton Sea that's right here, but this has only been here for roughly 100 years, and it occurred because a canal from the Colorado River broke and flooded this area, and it's continued to just be there. But it's slowly drying up. So ancient Lake Cahuilla, you can see the shorelines there that occurred roughly 10,000 years ago to, thousands and thousands years ago. And I have a video on this, and boy, the shoreline probably is the best example of shorelines, ancient shorelines that still exist. Again, the Native Americans here had traditions of this, and they were really the first geologists, and probably in some ways should be noted more for the things that they explain. Here is ancient fish traps that occurred in ancient Lake Cahuilla, and they're all over the former shoreline. Basically, what would occur is the waves from the lake would flow over these stone areas. Occasionally, fish would be carried over the waves, and they would be trapped in here. Today, these fish traps are all over along the shoreline. You won't find the locations on any of these on the internet because they're very carefully protected. Because you can see how easy that somebody could come, think it's a fire ring or something like that, and just absolutely destroy it. So Lake Manix, this is Walter, a friend of mine, Walter Feller, that created this video, but you can see what ancient Lake Manix once appeared. The only thing I would add to it is there would be all sorts of vegetation along the shoreline. It wouldn't be just a barren shoreline. What absolutely fascinates me about ancient Lake Manix, only 600 generations ago, is that there were all these animals that no longer exist, and in many cases they were giants. Now here's the western, we had a camel here, western camel that you can see it's a little odd looking. This is next to a llama. You can just see how big it is, and it looks like a camel, but it's bigger, and the face is a little different on it. That's one of the things that you're going to see, that many of these animals from that time look familiar. Around ancient Lake Manix, you would also find what's called the short-faced bear. The bear's face doesn't extend out as much, and look at the legs on this thing. I imagine it'd be much faster than a modern-day black bear that we have today. And then, of course, the mammoths roamed all over this area too, along the shoreline of Lake Manix, and they found fossils for these animals that I'm showing you. And Native Americans, I don't know why they capturing this looking white, because this wasn't that long ago, but maybe that's just some racism here, is that you have these white indigenous people that were actually brown skinned. But they hunted the mammoths, and one of the theories is that the mammoths were killed off by the Native Americans because they were slow moving. The theory is that they would run up and just spear the lungs and then follow the mammoth until it died. Now, everybody loves sloths, and it's just cute little things, and you can see a lot of pictures now that people will go to various countries and get their picture taken with holding a sloth. Well, this is what a sloth looked like during the time of ancient Lake Manix. It was about the size of a man, and this is a medium size sloth. There was bigger versions of this sloth that had occurred earlier, and definitely wouldn't want to be petting one of these animals. And here you can see it was contemporary with a saber-toothed cat. One of the things that so far hasn't been found, we know that saber-toothed cats existed during this time, but up to this point there's been no fossils found around the shoreline of ancient Lake Manix. But La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles, there's tons of saber-toothed cats that have been found from this time period. This is a painting that was done for White Sands National Park that was done during the Pleistocene period. You can see the various animals, what they looked like in the relation to the size of humans. And here's that sloth again. Again, you wouldn't want to go up and pet it. This was done for the same thing, late Pleistocene. This is life that an artist did for central Utah. And you can see the various animals, the mastodons, which are kind of an ugly version of mammoths. It's interesting how mammoths are loved, but mastodons are kind of neglected, unfortunately. You can see the western camels located in the back. Muskox, the extinct longhorn bison. The horns went straight out and they were longer. There's your saber-toothed cat. Again, there's the short-faced bear. Dang, those legs, I wouldn't want to be having one of these bears chase me. So concurrent with this is that they found life, human life here. This is the Calico archaeological site that's probably the most famous that's located out there. And one of the things I had that was on my bucket list before I die is I wanted to do a dig, an archaeological dig. And I volunteered to go out there. And this is my section right here. Actually, this section right here is what I was given to carefully dig and brush this area right here. And then the materials, I would screen it on this right here. And this is my claim to fame, is I found a flake that was allegedly broken off while they were making tools out of obsidian and agates. So we're finally getting to Afton Canyon. This is Afton Canyon. This is an aerial view from Google Maps. This is the area that everybody tends to be interested in right here. We're going to be talking about this area right up here, but we're going to spend a little bit more time down here before we get to that, just to give you a bigger, broader picture of what was going on. So Afton Canyon was once a giant lake, but that lake eventually breached through this area right here. It overflowed and broke that area. Here's an artist's rendition what it might have looked at for another lake, ancient lake that broke its dam and spilled over. So Afton Canyon was actually created by Lake Manix bursting or downcutting that breach, that landmass that occurred there, and then it just gouged out and created what's today known as Afton Canyon. So once it broke, the water that was flooding from the San Gabriel Mountains, and here's again Harper Lake that I've done a number of videos about, and was never really part of this lake system here, Lake Manix. But once Lake Manix breached that area, it flooded into Soda Lake. Here's Baker, California, and then into Silver Lake, which I have a video on that. And the overflow then eventually went to Death Valley. And so we're just briefly going to talk about Lake Manix in this area here that was in the Coyote Lake Subbasin. Here's Coyote Dry Lake today, and it's actually one of my favorite places to go out and explore. Do you see it? Very faintly, and we'll come back to this in just a minute, you can see what's left of the shoreline of ancient Lake Manix. The rest has been basically buried, or you can see some little parts here and there, but this is the best example of it right here. So my explorations of Coyote Lake, just going to share some of the findings I have. There's what's called an onyx mine, but it really isn't onyx, but it looks like onyx. So here's the shoreline. Here's the zoom up area, and what is so nice about this, there is a actually a mud road that drives right through here, and you can park your car right here and then get out and look at the shoreline. We'll do that just in a minute. So there's yardangs up here, and these are features that are created by wind, and they create what looks like a boat that's upside down. Here's the bow, and the stern is located over here, and you can see how this looks like an upside down boat. If you turned it over, this would be the point of the boat. You can find those up in this area right there. Here is a very beautiful rose quartz that I've found right here. It's chalcedony. You can see that it's kind of very translucent. And then on the inside is quartz crystals that are surrounded by little black mica crystals that are located right in that area right there. I've given this to my daughter. She wanted some things that I've collected for her office that I personally have collected. She's my, I have 4 daughters, and she's my geography daughter that we can connect well on this subject. And then up from the onyx mine, so-called onyx mine, this is what you see today. Here's Coyote Dry Lake. This is what ancient Lake Manix high water level would have looked like in the faulting that goes around it. And so let's go to this little location right here. This is what's called a beach barrier that was created by ancient Lake Manix. And this is my representation of what it looked like. The beach barrier was broached here by erosion. A stream came through here since then. But during its day, you would have seen trees along the area. There would have been marsh lines over here. And these are created during wave actions that push pebbles up onto the shoreline, just above the shoreline, and creates this little barrier here. Again, this is important because when we go to Afton Canyon, you're going to see these all over the place. And so here's a trench that I dug in that beach barrier. And I'm going to zoom up in it here in a minute, but you can see beach pebbles right here. You can see clamshells that I found at this location right here, and then there's bedding right here. And this basically, this type of layering indicates that this formation was created as the lake was drying up, as opposed to filling up with water. And so here's those fossil clamshells that you can see right there. And if you notice, I've highlighted them. This is the orientation. You have some that are upside down, and then you have some with the concave pointing downwards. You notice that most of them are pointing downwards. Here's one that's pointing upwards. This indicates that this was near the shore. There was some sort of wave action going on. And shells will eventually, with water blowing it, they're more water dynamic if they're facing downward. If they're facing upward, that little lip would catch and then turn them upside down. Oops. And so this tells you, just because of the orientation of the shells, that this was near the beach area with wave action going on. So now we're going to move into Afton Canyon, and I want you to take a look at this feature right here. You're going to drive on it when you're going down to Afton Canyon down here. Here's Highway 15. Here's the road. It's called Afton Canyon Roadway. And you can see it's on this rise right here. Well, that is a beach barrier. And if you park your car and then go down into one of the ravines right there, this is what you're going to find, is these oval-shaped flat rocks. And these are elongated, and it's due to the wave action going back and forth and eroding them to a point where they're flat and in many cases oval. And this is an indication that this was once a beach. Again, you remember the term uniformitarianism? If you see this, if you go to a modern day ocean or lake that's been around for a while and you have beach pebbles on it, if they've been there for quite a while, this is what they're going to look like. So you use that same principle. If you can see it today and you find these ancient deposits, that means they were created by some sort of water action on a beach. Another aspect of these Lake Manix beach deposit pebbles is that they interlock with the water going back and forth. Eventually they're going to catch, and they create this like V-shaped. This next picture shows it better. These red lines here where I did this just to show the orientation of the bubbles. And this shows it a little bit better. See how these V-shaped locks, how the pebbles interlock with each other? This is from the water going back and forth, and they eventually will interlock so that they're not eroded. It's nature's way of protecting the beach. Fascinating, isn't it? And they still exist. Tens of thousands of years ago this occurred, and I just find it fascinating. So again, look at this aerial view. Here's Afton Canyon over here. Here's that beach barrier with the roadway on it. And actually over here, and then the roadway actually goes down into, here it is, goes down to here. But the road was existing over in this area, but further back. And here's the campground. And this is the area that eventually I'm going to be hiking up and going up into this area right here. But my first exploration was up on this beach barrier. It's called the North Afton Beach Barrier Ridge by geologists. And this is what it looks like. And you can see my little tent way, way up there. I went around the back canyon and hiked up there. It's not too bad of a hike. It was probably about 4 or 5 miles round trip. It was just difficult finding a way to get up to this ridge line because it can get very steep. What you're seeing here is, this is Lake Manix lake deposits called lacustrine deposits. It's just a fancy term for lake deposits. And here was the erosional surface that they were deposited on. And clamshells, I found clamshells in there. Again, here's more of these beach pebbles that you can locate it here. And what is fascinating, to go back to the very first picture that I showed of you of the Thistle Lake that occurred in Thistle, Utah, when I was a young geologist, you can see modern day wave-cut terraces in here where the lake was at. And you can see how it was here for the longest time because you can see how prominent that ridge is. Here's another high mark that's very well defined. And briefly, the high mark would have been somewhere around here, and that might be a little terrace located right there. But that's the 18,000 foot maximum. Doesn't look like it was at that level too much, and probably just after that it was breached. The lake, the canyon was breached, and the lake drained out relatively fast and created Afton Canyon. So again, back to that principle, 1983, when I was a young geologist student at Brigham Young University. You can see the shorelines 40 years later. Well, thousands, tens of thousands of years later, you can see the shoreline up there. I should say thousands of years ago. Another aspect of it indicates that there was once an ancient lake is that you're going to see freshwater tufa deposits all in the rocks all over the place around there. And this a variety of limestone that occurs basically when the carbonate minerals in the water come out in unheated rivers or lakes and deposits on various things, typically rocks. And you're going to see this all over the place, and that's an indication there was once a large lake there. This is a picture from North Afton Beach Ridge, looking down to Afton Canyon there. Just beautiful sunset. I captured this picture just as the sun was going down. I set up my tripod and I set it for 10 seconds, and I quickly ran over here and jumped on the ground to get this picture because it captured something that was just a beautiful moment in geology for me. And again, just to recap, elongated beach pebbles that I found, tufa. I should remove this here, travertine, because it's a different type of calcium carbonate. It's actually tufa, clamshells that I found here, freshwater clamshells, and then milky quartz all over the place too. And so here's some pictures from the North Afton Beach Ridge with the sun setting, absolutely beautiful. So here's what we're eventually leading up to is I've taken 2 backpacking trips up into this backcountry. And the reason why this Mineral Society wanted me to give this presentation is that there is a lot of minerals to collect up in this backcountry right here. This is one of my campsites, and then I did another campsite up in somewhere over in this area right here. I'm probably not going to go back again because it really is a long haul to go up here, And if something happens to you when you're alone, it's a long haul. If you have a snake bite or a broken ankle or something, it's going to be a long haul to get out of there. These are some of the things I found. Fossil cattails and marsh that's located right here. Here's the minerals that I found right here. Here's some hydrothermal vents that I found. This is probably the most pretty one that's located roughly right there. I didn't get the actual latitude and longitude locations, which I regret now. And here's an incredible, right about this location right here, incredible view of the various rock layers and deposits that are located in Pyramid Canyon. So here's Pyramid Canyon, and probably I've never found any sort of minerals in this area. I think they've been mostly picked up, but there was some heavy rains this year. So this group that I was giving this presentation to, they were excited to see if they could find new minerals that are in this, that have been washed down from the upper reaches of the area. And here is Lake Manix deposits that are up in this region right there. You can generally tell it because it's going to have a light green color to it in this area right here. And it's going to be the highest layer. And here's another picture of it. So here's the Manix fault area right here. You can't miss it as you can't go really any farther up the canyon. There's a little trail that takes you around the Box Canyon right there. And as you go over the Box Canyon on the side of the Pyramid Canyon, you're going to see the Manix fault right here. And you can see another branch of the fault right here. And this one, you can see the basalt flows right here and the tuff flows right over here. At this point, this block is dipping roughly 30 degrees right here. And if you look down up in this area, and I've actually walked up this part right here, there's a hydrothermal deposit that's located right there. And this is one of the hydrothermal deposits, probably the best one. It's on the locations on the map that's higher up there. And you can see, actually, let me just go to the next picture. But hydrothermal deposits is basically minerals that go up through fractures and cavities in the rock. And the hot water and probably likely gases too are going through these cracks. And as they go up through these cracks, they start depositing minerals in those cracks. And that's where you get those gold deposits. That's where you get beautiful minerals. In this case, there's no gold, unfortunately. But this is perhaps better than gold, these beautiful minerals right here. And here's a close-up version. The white is milky quartz. The red is jasper. And this is one of the things, if you like jasper, there is a lot of jasper deposits up there. In fact, there's so much of it as you're going up the trail. You'll see where rock hounders have been collecting jasper, and it's just too much to carry, so they just drop it by the trail, and you can pick it up if you won't want to carry it. And then the screen stuff, I'm not sure, and I regret that I didn't take a sample and then do some microscopic review and testing on it to see what it is. I'm saying it's epidot, but I don't know. That's just my guess on it. So why these minerals, why there's so many minerals up in this area, and why they're associated with the basalt and the tough rocks that are up there, is that there was volcanic activity that went on in this area. And hot magma came up, obviously, and created those lava flows and tuff flows on the surface. But as that water, in particular from Lake Manix and other wetter climates, came down, just groundwater in general, came down and came in contact with that hot magma, it became steam and hot water and started to rise and percolate up through the cracks. And it would be deposited, mineral deposits would occur in those cracks. And as this area eroded down, those minerals are exposed on the surface. And so that's why Afton Canyon and the Caddy Mountains up in the upper branches of Afton Canyon have so many minerals up there. And this is going through what I call uh, the basalt falls area. This is basalt rocks in this area right here. And this is the cattail marshes, the upper areas right here. It's located in dolomite. And if you think you can chisel this out, I hate to tell you, unless you find a broken piece that's laying on the ground, you're not going to cut it out. Dolomite is like steel. It is so hard to get out, but there's all these beautiful fossils. And the first time I went up here, I only thought the fossils were in this area here. But the second time I went up here, I climbed over the top of this area right here. And you can look down on this dolomite, and the rock, you'll see all sorts of fossils on top of it. Worm tubes, cattails. It was a cattail marsh at one time. And I really want to encourage you. In fact, I'll show the video at the very end of this of my last trip up in this area, because videos sometimes show things that pictures don't show, and pictures sometimes show better than what a video can. So here's a cattail fossil, beautiful. And this is a living cattail that you see right here. This was my campsite, and on my video that we'll be watching here in a few minutes, this is what geologists see, is what you're seeing right here. And this is, if you were 10,000, 13,000 years ago standing at the same location, this is what you'd see in terms of Lake Manix. And you'd have all sorts of strange animals walking around that you don't see today. So this is where I'm exploring for minerals. And I'm going to share with you some of my tips in finding minerals up here at the very end of this. But you can see the volcanic tough areas. Anything that's kind of whitish, kind of have a soft powder to it, those are tough flows. And then the hard layers are basically basalt flows. And these are the various things that I found. I thought I didn't know. I didn't even know that blue quartz existed. I've never heard of it, and I was really suspicious when I was evaluating this right here. And just a few weeks ago, I was on YouTube and I saw somebody giving a presentation of finding blue quartz up in that area there. And I should warn you, the blue quartz does not look blue. It actually has kind of a dull color until you polish it or put water on it. And so this has water on it to make it shine up. But when the water evaporates, that luster kind of disappears. This is that jasper quartz and epidote. I'm not sure what the green stuff is. I did bring a sample of this home. Probably need to examine it. Calcite is located all over the place up there. You'll find it's never going to be clear. It's going to be kind of translucent or milky calcite. So here's the sun setting. Usually I look forward to spectacular sunsets. It was kind of cloudy that day. I'm a little disappointed with that. So here is the minerals that I found. I'm gonna turn on this video here. This is my last trip up to this area. Again, here's Pyramid Canyon, spectacular, and you can see the lake deposits located up in that area. It's light green color. This is called the mixing bowl right area. And on top of this is where you can find the cattail marsh, just right after that. This is how it looked millions of years ago. This is just so beautiful. It's a spiritual experience going on these backpacking trips. Yeah, there was a little cuss word there. Sorry about that. Okay, so here's some tips when you go up there. And this is when I do fossil or mineral hunting. One, before you even get out there, do your homework. I like to read geology technical reports just to get an idea of what the geology is. And sometimes they'll record where minerals are located at or fossils. The reality is the best source of finding those areas to find minerals and fossils are from rock hounds. And if you go on YouTube, you're going to find that nobody posts the locations where they find these things. It's really rare. But you need to make some friends, and they need to trust you that you won't share those locations. Now, generally, I'll share my locations. And to my more recent videos, I give the actual latitude, longitude locations of things that I find, only if there's a lot of materials there that won't be commercialized or anything like that. If it's kind of a scant resource, I don't share the location. I'll give the general location, and then it's your job to find it. But again, you want to go with somebody that's been there previously, because you're going to be wasting a lot of time looking for those specific locations. I've gone out on 3 trips to the trilobite hunting areas here in the Mojave Desert, the Trilite Wilderness Preserve. I have found nothing. I've found absolutely nothing. And I have 3 videos that I didn't make because I found absolutely nothing, not even a little fragment. So again, you need to, if you can, go out with somebody that's been there previously. Know your limits. It is a desert, and I generally carry 15 to 18 pounds of water, and that is a lot of weight to be hauling around, in addition to all my geologic equipment and that. And I generally come back thirsty the next day. I can only carry enough water for 2 days. If I ration it out, I can probably last 5 days out there. So you need to know your limits. And then again, when there's a major rainfall, as there was this year in 2022 and 23, the winter, this is really a great time to go out because all that rain erodes the surface off and it exposes new minerals. So this is the year to go out and find those items. And then here's some more things. During the trip, I always have my eyes on the ground. Now, one thing, the reason why I have eyes on my ground is I'm concerned about stepping on a snake, because if I get by a rattler, I'm generally miles away from my car. And I don't want to be in a situation walking back limping from a snake bite. So I always have my eyes on the ground. And if I want to look at anything, I stop and then look at the surrounding area. But before I move again, I have my eyes on the ground. But by the same manner, looking for snakes, you want to be looking for minerals too. This is really important. I found the more miles that you walk, this makes a lot of sense. So the more likely you're going to find treasures. So I generally put in a lot of miles. And Afton Canyon, that's where I found a lot of stuff. Is just 10-mile, one-day trips going up there. One of the things you want to do is avoid the trails, because there's a lot of people using the same trails that you're going to find when you're going on Afton Canyon. But just in general, avoid jeep trails and just trails in general, because if somebody has been using those trails a lot, they're going to discover those minerals and fossils, and they're going to take it, and you're not going to find anything. So generally what I do is go on the trackless areas. Now, the one exception to this with the Jeep and regular trails, in Afton Canyon, you're going to find a lot of piles of jasper that people dump because they just got tired of carrying it. They found better specimens, or it was just too much weight for them, and then they had to decide what they're going to take back. So you'll find on the trails up there, piles, little neat piles are stacked up like a little, monument for you to pick through if you want to go through it. Again, go on the trackless areas if you want to find something. It's important to note you have the same chance of finding something at the beginning of the day as opposed to the end of the day. I can't tell you how many times at the end of the day I'm exhausted. I just want to get to my tent or back to the car, and I'm not interested in looking anymore. I'm tired. I'm delirious at this point. I'm hungry and thirsty. And I can't tell you how many times that just almost at the last hour or just before the getting back to the car, I found some beautiful, spectacular crystals or minerals that were just the highlight of the whole trip. So again, just because you're tired, keep your eyes on the ground and always look. Now, you don't want to be a situation where you become a zombie and you're just walking around looking at the ground, but you're really not looking. So if that starts to happen, what I do is take a break, 5-minute break, refocus, take a few squigs of water, eat an energy bar, and then continue the journey. Because what's the point of walking around if you're not looking on the ground, searching? So folks, here's my videos. I got a few more, probably have 70 that are going to be at some point here in the future. I have to clean up a few, and I've posted 2 or 3 more since this last one right here. And I would encourage you to like them after you review it if you feel inclined to do so. And if you can provide comments on them, either good or bad, that's the more comments that I get on these videos, the more likely to have a higher share value with other people. And again, if you can share them also, I would appreciate it. I'm passionate about geology. I'm passionate about the outdoors. I love sharing, as a geologist and just as a rock hounder, my knowledge with others. It's an incredible profession to be in. I would encourage those that incline, those young people out there, if you love the outdoors, you love exploring, I would encourage you to look into being a geologist and getting at least a bachelor's degree. You know, the fascinating thing about geology is that unlike the other science degrees that you can get, it's one of the few science degrees that you can actually get a good job with just a bachelor's degree. Now, you're going to get a better job if you have a master's degree, but the other chemistry, physics, etc., etc., unless you have a master's or a PhD, it's going to be difficult to get a job unless you're going to be teaching high school science classes. Love you guys. Thank you for your support. I want to thank you, the 5 people out there that can consistently like my videos. I want you to know I really appreciate you. Have a great day and a great life. Love you all. Joe.